The God-man. Let yourself be one of the God-men, faithful only to the beauty you are. I should tell you from the start that I've been having a difficult time with this chapter, writing and discarding pages, moving on to complete or rewrite other parts of the book. The other chapters are complete, but still this one cries out to me, tells me that I'm hedging, not allowing the truth to speak to me or you about what it means to be God-man. So I begin again. It's not that I don't understand this small segment of the prose poem or that I agree or disagree with its directive to allow my experience of what is both the essence of what I am and larger than myself to determine my actions, regardless of what others think. It's that I find my life woefully lacking in instances when I have allowed myself to follow unreservedly the impulse that comes from the moment of fully and ecstatically touching the beauty of the divine within and around me. Of course, I do have my private moments of letting my intimacy with the beloved have its uncensored way with me. Years ago, I often drove alone to a small trailer I owned on an isolated wilderness campsite, arriving late at night. Each time I arrived, I would step from the car after turning off my headlights and shout exuberantly into the welcoming darkness, "Hi, honey, I'm home." Listening to my voice echo across the lake to the unmoving silhouettes of hemlocks and white pines on the opposite shore, up through the air to infinite points of light and an indigo sky. This earth, this universe, this breathtaking manifestation of the divine presence is the home I love. And nowhere do I feel this more strongly than when I'm in the Canadian wilderness. The beauty of this place and my sheer delight at being there made the words spill out of me, unconcerned about how crazy most people would probably think it was to call out to the trees and the sky and rocks and water as if I were coming home and greeting an intimately familiar partner, because I was. Of course, I also knew that no other person could hear me. Like most people, I behave, even without thinking, according to the commonly agreed on social norms, which doesn't include calling out to trees and skies, rocks, and water. Some might think that I've already pushed that envelope by using the name Oriah Mountain Dreamer. In fact, I can't even claim using the name as courageous act defying social convention. I was given the name by one of the Native American elders with whom I studied, and initially I never used it outside of context of sacred ceremony, but because of the prose poem, The Invitation, had been offered first to students who knew me in the context of ceremony as Oriah Mountain Dreamer. The name went with the poem when it was passed around the world. Although program directors, TV producers, and interviewers often complain that the name is problematic, that it makes others suspicious that I might be a little crazy or flaky, a sentiment I completely understand and would probably share if approached by someone else with this name. The name is stuck. When I'm interviewed, one of the first questions I'm most often asked is, "That's not your real name, is it?" To which I lightly respond, "Oh, it's a real name, all right. It's just not my birth name." Historically, in many cultures, a name taken as a part of a spiritual path is considered far more real than one given at birth, when so little is known about the character or future of the individual. But reality is culturally defined. And in my culture, the names deemed real are the names that reflect the husband or father whom you belong and from whom you are entitled to inherit property, because blood ties and property are generally accepted as considerably more real than spiritual experiences. So I've resigned myself to being known as Oriah Mountain Dreamer and dealing with the reactions this causes, laughing along with hotel personnel who stumble over, yes, Miss Mountain, Miss Dreamer, when confirming my room service order. This resignation could hardly be touted as an instance of defiant faithlessness to my deepest essence or spiritual experience. Craziness is commonly understood to be an unwillingness or inability to participate in cultural agreements we make about what is real. That to which we collectively attribute not only to existence, but also meaning and importance. I do not want to make light of the suffering endured when someone afflicted with mental illness cannot determine any qualitative difference between the voice of the person in front of them saying hello and their voice in the mind's ear telling them to hide in a basement because someone is coming to harm them tonight. When I was employed as a social worker, I found that line between the neurosis we all share and psychosis, which is fortunately less common, was it generally and very sadly clear when you were in a room with someone suffering the latter. The ability to understand and take into account how your culture defines reality is one sign of being grounded and sane. But what happens when your experiences lie outside this culturally acceptable definition of reality, as many spiritual experiences do? Surely Moses paused and wondered if he was losing his mind when he heard a burning bush speak to him. Do Christians who believe in the virgin birth think that Mary's friends and family believed her when she turned up pregnant and said she had never had sex? What reaction do you think Jesus' disciples got when they went home and reported feeding hundreds with only a few loaves of bread and a small number of fish? History is full of stories of those we revere as great saints or teachers, thought by many during their time to be simply mad. One of my favorites is the story of Mirabai, the 16th century Indian mystic and poem. Mirabai was a devotee of Hindu god Shiva, widowed at an early age and refusing to follow the cultural norm and throw herself on her husband's funeral pile. Mirabai gave her jewels and silk dresses to wander the countryside singing and dancing and reciting poetry in praise of God. Her in-laws were so furious they tried to have her killed and stop her craziness, and the shame they felt it brought upon them. What would it look like if we allowed ourselves to be God-mad? If we simply decided to stop whatever we were doing and wait until the impulse to move came from a deep awareness of the sacred present within and around us, and then followed wherever it led. When I think of this happening in the world, I imagine a work-weary woman in a busy office, suddenly pausing at her desk, doing nothing for a moment, and then getting up and quietly walking out the door, leaving her computer running and her coworkers baffled. Imagine a man sitting in his living room dozing in front of the TV as he does every night after dinner, suddenly turning his head as if to catch the echo of some sound coming to him from a great distance after listening for a minute, getting up and without bothering to turn the TV off, walking outside and continuing in the direction of the setting sun. Oh, I know what you're thinking. How will the woman pay her bills without her job? What about the man's responsibilities to his family? But you're leaping to conclusions about what will happen next. Maybe the woman finds another way to provide for herself and her family that does not rob her soul of the joy she longs for every day. Maybe she finds and does not need as much, or maybe she returns tomorrow and finds a different way to be in that office. Maybe the man waking up from his habitual patterns and walking toward that call, what calls him, really sees his family for the first time and can offer them something more than the tired absence of daily routines, divorced from the meaning at the center of his life. I'm not suggesting that listening to the call will necessarily require that you leave your job or turn off your TV, although I admit I could launch a really good argument for the latter. One person may be able to be faithful to the beauty of being aware of his or her essential nature, to the ecstasy of touching the beloved daily and still work in an office, while another may need to leave. The hard part is that we cannot predict what the call will require. How that sacred stillness at the center of all, that is, might inspire us to move if we have the courage to simply sit with it and follow the impulse to move when it comes. I know that what I'm talking about is here. The not doing that allows something other than the desire to change things guide our movements, is by current cultural standards crazy. If you doubt this, consider where it might lead. How much of what we do might be left undone if we truly sat and waited for the impulse move to find us from deep within the presence that surrounds and sustains us? Would anyone feel drawn to start another war or diligently pursue a career that did not bring real joy to themselves or beauty to the world? Would anyone spontaneously find in that great well of silence the overwhelming impulse to invent yet another shade of lipstick, another gas-guzzling automobile, another fridge magnet, or innovative product like Pet Rocks? Maybe some things just wouldn't get done, and what might that mean to our way of life? What if, in realizing how precious our awareness of the beloved is, in tasting the joy that flows from being present, we simply insisted that we would move only as fast and only in the direction we could move without losing the exquisite taste of that which is larger and yet within each of us? Many around you would think you mad, particularly if the impulse you followed involved turning away, even temporarily, from what this culture promotes as most real and most valuable. Yes, I mean, if your movement took you in that direction to cut your income or profits. So, at the risk of leaving you shaking in your head in dismay, let me tell you about one time when I can truly say I allowed myself to be God mad, to follow the impulse that came from deep within my essential self, even when it cost me something that those around me considered valuable. I don't expect you to approve. I've discovered that no matter how much those who are interested in cultivating a spiritual life are drawn to and admire the idea of being God mad, when our choices run contrary to the social values we breathe in daily, they stir fear and anger. I'm about to go on the road for a second book tour. I've accepted invitations to speak at a variety of venues. And while I'm looking forward to meeting the different groups, I also have some trepidation, aware that on my first book tour, I had at best an intermittent awareness of any internal stillness as I traveled. Some of this was simply adapting to the unfamiliarity of frequent traveling, hotel living, and meeting so many new people. As much as I appreciate room service, and I really do appreciate it, there can be something a little undergrounding, a little unreal, about returning to your room to discover all your mess has disappeared as if by magic, particularly when you are used to doing all of it on your own, cleaning up. But the real challenge was to remember why I wrote in the first place, when enthusiastic publicists, conference promoters, and program directors were offering what they felt was helpful advice and encouragement on how to take full advantage of good book sales and increase my income and profile. Now, I have nothing against making money, and I know that personal appearances help to make a book available to readers. I felt like I had been not so much drawn into the pursuit of fame, and fortune has thrown too often off to the center by being surrounded by the noise of that pursuit. Perhaps this is in part because I'm Canadian, and Canada has the same kind of economic system and materialist values as the United States. The difference is volume. Since Canada has only 1/10 of the population spread over an enormous expanse of land, Canadians simply do not have the same number of opportunities at home to make substantial sums of money. Never mind that most Americans and Canadians never make millions. The siren song of the possibility is much louder in the States. Canadians are not more virtuous about making money, although it is possible that less extroverted culture in Canada covets fame less. They simply don't have the same level of temptation or opportunity to make it an exclusive or superseding goal. I'm spending a lot of time in prayer, preparing for my second book tour, asking for a way to stay centered and unattached to the subtle and not so subtle pressures to make decisions about my future based on what seems likely to increase income. I'm trying to find my way into not doing and to allowing my thoughts or others' evaluations about which venues would give the greatest monetary return to determine my actions. In addition to these inner concerns, I've gone to an immigration lawyer to get the proper papers for working in the United States. According to the lawyer and others I know doing similar work in the States, the work I'm about to do will be watched carefully in the future. An old dear friend who is a longtime yoga teacher and practitioner tells me with a great vehemence, "You can't do this. You can't refuse to justify your choices to those around." I think Rumi's words as Coleman Barks has translated them into Rumi, the Book of Love. Feeling the love this tiny nun had for those she sought to comfort.